Teams at the bottom of the standings are swapping out coaches and staff. See if that can turn the tides as the race for playoff positioning approaches its end. Fans are hyped to see the always swaggerful Hooney and Equifox take on the other second-place team in 100 Thieves. A couple fans entering the arena just moments ago. Again, big matchup here at the top of the day.
Afro's lounging.
He's not worried. He ain't worried.
Wake up for the game.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the NA LCS Countdown, where for 30 minutes we track coaching changes and look at the league's overachievers until the timer reaches 0 and we jump into Champion Select. Now, after the org's third consecutive O2 weekend, Counterlogic Gaming let go of their head coach of 2 years and member of the org for 5 years, Tony Zix Gray.
And he's
a big move.
Synonymous with CLG. I mean, even before he officially joined as a staff member, he was a monster fan of them. Season 1, like emailing them documents to Hotshot GG about things that they could be doing better before finally getting brought on, I believe, in Season 4 officially. And that's, you know, that's why he is such like a core tenet of CLG, it feels like, and now no longer with them.
Yeah, I think it was definitely a shocking move because of all of his accomplishments, bringing CLG to their first title, taking North America to greater heights than they'd almost ever been by making the finals of MSI when CLG went there. But also, all of that can be true, and it can still be time to part ways with the coach, because that was actually a very long time ago.
Right.
And CLG didn't go to Worlds last year. They didn't make playoffs last split, and they're sitting at 5-9 this split. So if CLG does want to climb to new heights, it might just be time to let go. And I think Zix will find a new team with how much experience he has, and I still think he is one of the greatest coaches in the history of the North American LCS. But I also don't hold CLG accountable and say, why would you ever fire Tony? Because they haven't had success for a while.
Yeah, that's what hits me hard about what you're saying there, though, that he's one of the great, you know, perhaps one of the greatest coaches all time in the NALCS, and that's why it'll sting in the immediacy. But to your point, it's just because he's one of the greatest coaches of all time doesn't mean he's going to fit with every puzzle and every puzzle piece, right? So as the org in its franchise mode has changed things within its structure, maybe that's not where he belongs, and it's time for him to move somewhere else and make substantial gains.
And that's what I'm really excited about, though we might not see it this split. I mean, maybe someone picks him up in the consultant role that we've seen for Nero recently, but like, I can't wait to see where Tony lands, because he's definitely going to land on his feet. And next split, it'll be super hype watching him go up against CLG.
Now, I'm going to put you guys on the spot, because you're essentially going to say whose job does Zix take?
Just him.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Which team could maybe benefit from a very experienced coach like Zix?
I think there's a lot of teams that could use him, and I'm just wondering whether it's going to be a short-term or long-term acquisition. I feel like any team that hasn't found success should at least consider him. I mean, even look at where we are right now in franchising, where the bottom 3 teams have had coaching changes in the past 2 weeks. Right? It's been all of these teams that I think in the past, before we've had franchising, if you're sitting at 5-8 and tied for 10th, you're thinking, how do we stay in the league? And they're too afraid of getting rid of their coach, because that could just make everything collapse.
Risk of relegation.
Exactly. Whereas now I feel like they're more willing, even though they're still trying to make pushes for playoffs, they're not as afraid of that cataclysmic event that breaks the team, because they know they're going to be around next year.
And I think with the addition of academy coaches as well, a lot of them want to give this guy a chance to step up. So Morissette, working with Golden Guardians, was their academy coach, known as Mango, now going as Morissette for Stage today. And if this is the guy that you're potentially going to put your next year on, you want to give him a little bit of a trial on the back half of a split where you're struggling to make playoffs anyway. So I think not only the franchising removing relegations, but having more support staff in-house makes it so these transitions are easier than they ever would have been.
Right, there's been a bit of an incubation period. These guys are now giving the opportunity to show up on stage. Again, you mentioned Golden Guardians making this change as well this week, following the clutch situation from last week, David Lim moving off of the stage there. No surprise that the bottom 3 teams are the ones making moves here this late in the season.
And also, there's kind of an old adage in sports that it's easier to change one coach than 20 players. Like LCS will be
hard to change
5 or 10
LCS
players. Some teams have pretty big rosters, Dash. I'm not sure if you checked. But also, we have to remember the roster lock was 2 weeks ago, and that doesn't apply to coaches. So the teams that have actually made these changes were in contention for playoffs a week or 2 ago. And now they can't change their players. So the things they have left to try is the coaching staff.
Only so many levers to pull, and they're going to pull the ones that are accessible to them. We'll see if these changes have any effect in the games today as we pull up the schedule, presented by Jersey Mike Subs. Second place teams, 100 Thieves and Equifox, brawl it out in Game 1, with Cloud9 versus Golden Guardians in Game 2. Then Counter Logic Gaming load up versus TSM shortly after. And the NA LCS Lounge stream boots up tomorrow for Team Liquid versus Cloud9, where Freak, Contracts, and Deathly will be going live on Riot Games too. If the craving strikes sometime this week, order a sub above at jerseymikes.com, where using the promo code JMNALCS pairs your meal with in-game rewards like Hextech chest skins and RP. Let's see what the teams are fighting though for as we pull up the standings. Team Liquid currently sitting alone at the top with Echo Fox and 100 Thieves just one game behind them, leaving Cloud9, FlyQuest, and Optic in 4th, TSM just shy of 6th at 6 and 8. And now while teams that missed the playoffs last split are currently sitting in the top 6, their spot is far from guaranteed just yet.
You just saw no one has clinched playoffs and no one has been eliminated.
In Europe.
The end of week 8, which is only 2 games ahead of where we are right now, 6 teams have clinched playoffs and 4 have been clinched out of it. So it's just seeding they're playing for right now.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, so it's nuts. But let's talk about some of these teams that find themselves in contention for a playoff spot where they didn't last split and the road they must take or traverse to get there.
The most interesting team to look at for me is Optic, because they have been one of the big surprises. A couple of teams in the middle of the split were fighting for playoff positioning, but Optic towards the end, where some other teams have dropped down, is still up there. But then when you look at who they have played in the second half of the season so far, they have to play the 1, 2, and 3 teams in the league in the next 2 weeks, and then TSM as well, who is obviously no joke.
Yeah, that is an incredibly difficult schedule, and that means that Optic can't just keep playing at the level they have been playing at, which has been a 7-7 record against easier opponents. You take that into either TL, Echo Fox, or 100 Thieves, and you probably lose, which would then, even with a victory over TSM, move them to 8 and 10, which doesn't give you playoffs. So they have to absolutely overperform, pick up 2 wins in these next 4 if they want to get playoffs, which is a pretty tall task.
Yeah, very much so. Performing well in their last few weeks, the road only gets tougher for them. The flip side of that whole strength of schedule argument is FlyQuest. Tied with Optic in the standings, they actually have the easiest remaining schedule by record.
Yeah, and as much as we've kind of been nitpicking them about some what feel like fluky wins with some base races and crazy stuff like that, at the end of the day, they're picking those up against very quality opponents. You see that they have the easiest remaining schedule left between the other 3 bottom teams that are tied for that 10th place. So
and a surging Cloud9 to close it out.
So Cloud9 at 7-7 looks a lot better than that in the second half of the split.
Yeah.
So that one's still going to be a difficult game. But to Jat's point, if you just assume they beat the teams underneath them from here on, FlyQuest actually does become a playoff team.
Oh, very much so.
All 3 of those teams as well have gone under coaching changes in the past few weeks, so they're potentially in a little bit
of a wild card situation.
Think Fish just looking at that.
So it's the opportunity for FlyQuest to really get the playoffs closed up.
Yeah.
You cannot ask for a better finish to the season.
Without a doubt. The last team I want to talk about is another one of those, bottom 3 teams in CLG. Coaching change as well, but have a fairly easy schedule ahead of them. Granted, TSM, FlyQuest, their first 2 opponents this week underneath that new tutelage.
Yeah, another split for CLG and another 6-game losing streak. They had this in the spring as well. They did follow that up with a string of wins, so it is still technically possible for them to finish 9 and 9. The difficulty, though, comes with the fact that they're playing the hardest part of their last 4 games right away, right after the coaching change. And their biggest rival is the first one of that. So their season is decided in the next 2 days.
Pressure match.
Right, but there's always this kind of like honeymoon phase you hear people talk about, and so it's nice to maybe get 2 of them out of the way, and if you can squeak out some wins here, going into the next week, if you go 2-0 this week, you feel fantastic as you have a chance to get back up to 9 and 9 and have a real shot at playoffs, and you have the easiest road ahead of you, the easiest possible week 9.
All right, well, CLG fans are hoping for that honeymoon phase here early in the weekend. But Freak and Azale will be sharing their thoughts on Game 1 in just a bit. First, ThinkCard is excited to see how the top lane matchup will play out versus 100 Thieves.
I think it'll be a really good game. Obviously, both top laners are arguably the best top laners in the league. And then both teams kind of have shaky early games in the past few weekends. And both teams rely on strong macro to take control of the game. So I am expecting maybe a little bit of a sloppy early game. But then once mid-game stabilizes, to have pretty clean rotations and a pretty good game overall. Smoothie definitely helps us stay calculated. Obviously, from the past 2 weekends, you can still see that we're still very aggressive, but not as much. And our macro is just a little more calculated than before. So it definitely helps to have Smoothie on board.
Yeah, I think Smoothie's been a great player, and I also think it's going to be a very good match between these two teams. Echo Fox and 100 Thieves doing battle in about 19 minutes. And most of the league has been scrambling to find a foothold in the postseason. These teams, though, really close to securing their spots in the top 6. A win puts you at 10, which is the highest that 7th place TSM could go.
And Echo Fox has put themselves in that position with a new bottom lane that has been really performing well and honestly covering up for some of the poor performances that Huni has been having lately. Smoothie and Lost have been on point, and the team looks really good, even with Huni not playing his best. So if he can return to form, this really could be the best team in the league.
And what a time to return to form it would be for Huni. He's up against probably not only the best top laner in the league, but maybe the best player overall in the NA LCS in Someday.
Yeah, I mean, Someday has been playing so incredibly well, and I think he's very important for the style that 100 Thieves plays. He creates so much pressure on the top side of the map that it allows the 100 Thieves to play this kind of slow scaling style where they're avoiding a lot of fights, where they're waiting for Cody Sun to scale up and take over in team fights, and you can't do that with everyone sitting back. And that is kind of some of the problems that TSM has been having, but 100 Thieves always have pressure on the top side of the map because Someday has been a monster, and we're going to really have to watch and see how Lost and Smoothie can actually fare against Cody Sun and Afromoo, because I think if Cody Sun gets put behind, if he has a bad game, 100 Thieves usually are not successful.
Absolutely, it's going to be a fun one to watch for because I think all these matches across the map are going to be very exciting. Now, ahead of that matchup, Avali prodded the 100 Thieves coach for today's game plan.
Thanks, guys. Spoke with Coach Prawley about their game against Echo Fox today, and he said that as long as they focus on the early game, they're confident that they could take down Echo Fox due to Fox's tendency to make some sloppy mistakes. He said that not only is Dardoch the biggest threat to 100 Thieves, but also to Echo Fox themselves. And in light of all of these coaching changes in the LCS this week, he said that he's going to be making the biggest one of all by putting me in as head coach on stage today. I'm going to be bringing in the Yordles. We're going to see.
All right, I got to stop you there. No. This is not happening. I'm going to remain as head coach for 100 Thieves. Thank you very much, though.
I'm keeping the jacket, and he is also going to buy the entire broadcast crew Yeezys. Back to you guys.
Oh, no, please no.
A surprise 4th coaching change here in Week 8. Avali in for Prawley. What do you guys think of that move?
I think it's been a long time coming. Avali is one of the best minds in League of Legends history. Get her on stage.
Yeah.
Get Prawley out of there.
Lux support.
She plays a mean MF, too. We were playing some Nexus Blitz the other day, and she was hard carrying all of us casters.
Support.
Oh, I thought you said play. I was like,
I did.
Sorry, it is your fault.
Her first move as new coach is to put herself in at support. All right, well, with that first match in 17 minutes, I do want to get you guys' win conditions for Fox, 100 Thieves. Mark, we're going to start with you.
Yeah, and I think one thing we talk about is the red side win rate in other regions. It's horrible here in NA, but one of the things they talk about is the LPL counterpick, and that's the region where they have the best red side win rate. And with Echo Fox being a team that loves to counterpick, they love busting out new champions, take that approach here. You're on red side versus 100 Thieves. Go and get your solo lane counterpicks as best you can and use that to try and snowball to a quick victory.
All right, so heavy draft focus here to get advantages for Echo Fox. What's the response from 100 Thieves, Jat?
100 Thieves is going to win the way they normally do. You slow the game down, and you get Cody Sun on a crit marksman. This is a patch where the crit marksmen are the strongest they have been since the summer split. Cody Sun was actually first team all LCS in the spring when crit marksmen were in vogue. So I think that gives 100 Thieves a little bit of an edge there if they can do this. And this is actually how they won their first game against Echo Fox as well.
How many crits does Cody need to win a game?
100% crits.
100%?
Yes.
Okay,
no, but a specific number, please.
Yeah.
Give me an absolute value of crits. All right, let's get that counter up on the screen. 78 crits, and 100 Thieves gets a victory. It's an interesting matchup between these two teams because they find themselves in a very similar situation to where they were in the spring split. That kind of 2-3 position just outside of that, top dog in Team Liquid.
And while there's been a lot of roster turnover for Echo Fox, they still feel like the same team in how they play. And I think that's what's going to be interesting because they didn't get to play in playoffs. Despite the fact that it was 100 Thieves in the finals, a lot of fans left Miami being like, I think Echo Fox
have put up a better fight?
Yeah, so I'm interested to see how this match goes.
All righty, we're going to step away. When we return, I get these two to give me their next top solo queue picks to enter competitive. We look at this split's overachievers, and I gather predictions for the day. All that and more after the break. Welcome back to the NA LCS Countdown. We're about 13, or not 13, I had a dyslexic moment there, 11:30 away from the first game of the day. This week, we enter patch 8.15, and throughout the day, we'll be hitting on the specifics of that patch. But so far, this split, we've seen 85 unique picks in the league. So I wanted to dive into some of the fringe picks that we've seen, why we've seen them, and what we'd like to see from this point on.
Yeah, I think with the big meta changes that happened with the midseason patches and everything, it kind of broke everyone's understanding of like what was a meta and competitive pick. And for inspiration, a lot of people turned to solo queue as their main source of inspiration and started adapting a lot of those picks into their scrims, and that resulted in a lot of strategies that were formerly considered more solo queue-oriented picks and strategies. Things like the Master Yi Taric and all that stuff started being the kind of baseline for what people were playing competitive.
Yeah, a lot of times pro players and coaches have these gut checks of, oh yeah, if you can't do this, you can't fit in that role. Like for a long time, if you couldn't escape as a jungler, you couldn't be a competitive jungler because you needed the ward. So Yorick is an example of this split, a pick that is really bad at team fighting, so therefore he can't be a pro pick. But wait, he actually is a pick for some big strengths.
Right, you talk about average split pushers in competitive, you look at Gnar, Camille, Jax, all these things, while liking to split push, can also team fight. Yorick almost cannot team fight without being able to get his ghouls up, and you see there, winning a game for Optic by split pushing down mid lane and side lanes and getting 2v1s. His team never came to him. They picked Victor with wave clear to stall the game out, Varus as well, and they all in on the idea that we will never 5v5 you.
Yeah, and an example there is that they make up for the weaknesses with the other picks in the team composition. And that's more people are willing to do that because they were pushed off of AD carries and they had to ad-lib a whole bunch throughout the split. So Victor was a great mid laner to pair with Yorick.
Right, we saw the blow up of the meta. Everyone scrambled for, okay, well, what actually works? But it did also just force them to reevaluate almost every champion on that 141 champion list for what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses, and how could they be usable. Another big pick we've seen is Quinn.
And this one isn't your backline marksman damage dealer, but it is something that has huge mobility, good flanking, and is extremely effective at getting to side lanes. It used to be if an AD carry was split pushing a side lane, his name was Doublelift, he was pushing up too far and he was dying. So you can pick Quinn and do this differently. Normally now you only see solo laners split pushing, but Quinn is a pick that can do that. And remember, that then changes how everyone else on your team plays. It means your solo laners aren't side laning as much. It means the rest of your team composition needs to fit around it to find more sustained damage, since Quinn's more of a burst AD carry. And just because it's super strong, just raw numbers-wise in solo queue, if you find a way for it to fit, it's very effective.
Yeah, another one that does that is Wukong. Just has had the highest win rate in mid lane and Diamond and above for a really long time now. And so far, Caps is the only guy who's like, all right, let me take this thing and make it work in competitive. And what's interesting about Wukong is as an assassin, he still has teamfight threat. So he goes in, assassinates the back line here, but then can continue refocusing onto the front line with his ultimate still ticking, gets his second round of spells up, whereas a lot of assassins are single target focused. And it does lack a lot of the typical things you see. It is very hard commitment. You can't fizz ult and see if it lands or something like that, which is more typical of an assassin. Doesn't have wave clear like a Zed might. He's missing a lot of those things, but he has such strong base numbers. The team is playing mages in the bot lane to give some support for the fact that he's playing an 80 assassin in the mid lane. They did it again today on 8-15, which I love to see out of Fnatic. And it's just an example of this really strong solo queue pick now being adapted correctly for competitive.
Very timely that they just played it, picked up
Set up the segment perfectly.
Thank you very much,
advance.
Fnatic. But all right, those are three examples of picks that we have seen and seen them be successful here this split. What are some picks that either haven't been seen or have seen a little bit of play that we'd like to see more of?
One for me is Mordekaiser, and a lot of people busted this out towards the start of the split with all the crazy funnel strategies, but we haven't seen him in any of the top 5 regions in the past 2 or 3 weeks, I believe it is, ever since they killed Funnel effectively. But if you look at his win rates in solo queue, he actually still has fantastic win rates against a lot of the marksmen, and those are what got buffed on 8-15. It's what we're expecting to trend towards. So if anyone put in the experience in previous patches practicing this Mordekaiser, I would love to see them still try it on this patch, even though it's not what people think is the new hotness with all the marksman buffs, but it can still work.
What are you thinking?
So one champion I've identified is Pantheon. I think he's a great matchup into Graves if you play that. And we did see Dardoch play it during Rift Rivals as someone who could gank very early, since he doesn't have either the out button that a lot of other junglers have or the jungle clearing ability. But what you can do is you can snowball specific members of your game. And with Marksman being buffed, I think Pantheon can apply a lot of early and mid-game pressure to try and really get that AD carry ahead in the game. And that's where I want to see it played.
Kind of like a Nocturne Light in some senses,
His early ganking is so much stronger, and then he can still really make this unavoidable gank at 6.
All righty, well, there you have just a couple thoughts from us on what we would like to see, and perhaps the pros will bring it out today. Tomorrow, though, you two will be pit against each other in a dueling draft So we'll see if you got the moxie to break out a solo queue pick then. But for now, let's tune into this week's mic check where Echo Fox found their split push victory against TSM. You better draft Mordecai.
All right, I'll do it.
Can I mute the jungler, please? I really don't want to go for Scuttle Crab this game.
I can't mute anyone. Sorry.
Blows. It's top, then jungle, then mid.
Yeah.
Okay, so John, top to bot. Top to bot.
Just we need the both vision. So
I got double scuttled in solo queue today, and I ended that game 0-10. That's all I'm saying.
It's okay to tilt today. Game's about to start. Good luck, guys.
It's okay to int, guys. Don't worry. Right to start it, or?
I mean, yeah. It's okay to int. That's it. Yo, do I have any boogers?
No.
My girl, Zoe. Back at it again. I'm gonna make the play now, then I need a base. I think I'll just base. Yeah, just base.
Can I take his pink? We're not gonna have the vision of him.
Hey, look, this.
Yeah. I'm watching.
I bind it.
His ulti should be down still, no?
Go on, Mark. I'm moving up. Go on, Mark. I'm coming first. I'm coming first. Go on, Varus. Chase. Oh, low. Oh, I'm just gonna base. I'm gonna base. Let's go. Good job, guys.
Yeah. They have Nocturnal, so we just have to be mindful.
I can still TP you.
They can be both
taking top right now?
They can be both.
I know. Oh, look at Cinder. We can go.
I'm hovering late. Morgana is there first.
Fight top.
I'll TP too.
Nice, Kindred.
I can fear him after. He's gonna get feared.
Let's go here.
Go.
He's done.
Yeah. Kindred. Zoe. Zoe no flash. Joe. You guys are gonna win. Joe no flash.
Oh,
you guys can go. I think that guy still has no flash. Huni, I'm not sure though.
Nice.
Nice, boys.
I have TP for behind. I'm looking for a Q here.
Okay, he has good stuff.
here.
Okay, was in the big somewhere. I'm getting. But I read.
Oh, nice.
Not a big come. Yeah, let's go. We can just end the game if they start it down.
This turret's just gone, I think.
This turret's gone. That was just too troll. Okay, that's fine.
Okay, just keep pushing. Might be a fight here. We're show.
We have Kindred. Go. Keep going.
Yeah, it'll be fine.
Okay.
Just start it slow. Here. Don't die. Just don't die here. Just don't die here. But stop their bases. Yeah. Get the bot in here.
Joe and Lucian can base. We don't need to shoot right now.
Slowly here, okay?
I can hold this back.
Maybe I'm getting Nexus too.
Okay. We killed Cho, I think. I flash.
Nice.
Yeah, we killed Cho. Yeah, we can go.
I'm gonna TP.
Okay, yeah, no, I'm TP. I can cancel. IGA.
Let's go, Josh.
Yeah, we're good, Andy.
The TV's in base.
Okay, I'm backing off here. Can you stop him? Up there. Go up there. Go left, Tanner. Go left.
I think we win.
Yeah, go left. You guys got it?
We win. Yeah, we got it.
Oh, boys.
I want you to repeat the exact point you just made at the end of that video.
We were watching the end of the mic check and trying to decide, like, oh, it looked like Echo Fox thought they made a macro mistake when they gave up the inhibitor, but in giving up the inhibitor, they gave it up. And that's when I said, I wish you could just start the game from that exact point and play it out like 15 different times.
Right.
Because there's so many different things that could have happened in that moment that ended up deciding the game.
And that's the important thing in watching that replay is understanding the height of the moment there, right? Like we're all a week removed, and so it's easy to say, oh,
we're still debating,
you know, like TSM, you know, it's all their fault or whatever. But even Echo Fox themselves did think that they had made the mistake that ultimately ended up leading to their victory. But as the split ends, discussions will begin around MVP and NA LCS all teams. We wanted to give some credit to the overachievers who tend to fly under the radar. We're going to run through a few names here. First up, Golden Guardians Deftly.
Yeah, he's come a long way since a joke about accidentally thinking you're signing Deft and Mata to signing Deftly and Matt, because he has the highest KDA amongst 80 carries, a massive CSD, has had a very good champion pool, and has been a bright spot on a team that has struggled of late.
Yep, and he is one of the big win conditions for this team, the 4 percentage. He plays that Heimerdinger a lot. We've talked about it endlessly.
Maybe the Mordekaiser now.
Maybe the Mordekaiser. I would love to see it if you want to have some counter picks into marksman.
He's the guy to do it.
Yeah.
All right, next up, Licorice in the top lane for Cloud9, the only guy to not get subbed out this split.
And for good reason. He has been the kind of focal point for this team. Even when they were losing all those games at the start of the split, he almost always had massive leads for himself and was crushing the game. They were not able to convert those leads into victories, but now with more veterans back on the team, with the leads that he's getting them, they're actually closing the games out, and it's still all coming from him.
All right, from there, we're going to move on to FlyQuest, where we find Santorin.
Yeah, and this is a guy who has actually turned into a journeyman for the last 4 years since he was been on TSM, and people called him a ward by the time he left the team. But he has had a huge comeback split. I think found a lot of respect. He's had good numbers on FlyQuest. He's willed them to a lot of victories where they're a 500 team. And I have nothing but positive things to say about Santorin, who's stuck around in the scene for so long and is having another good split.
Yeah, not a splashy pickup, but hasn't been replaced. Like everyone thought when the Meteos trade happened, he's going to get replaced for sure, but he has definitely earned his spot on this team, making a lot of big plays.
Currently in the playoff picture, pressure, looking to remain there. Finally, let's talk about Dokla in the top lane for Optic.
And this was a guy who, at the time when he was signed, came in for spring, didn't make a ton of huge plays. Then they brought in Alorum. They were going to fight to try and fill Zig's spot over the course of the split, and he's actually done that this time around, playing a ton of split pushers, and it's a different style of split pushers than we've seen a lot of the times, but his team is playing around him correctly and generating leads.
6-3 with Dokla, I feel like speaks for itself when he wasn't even able to do it in spring, but he's done it here in summer.
Well, as we approach on game one or narrow in, let me get your guys' predictions for the day. Taking a look at it.
I heard we had one that was different.
I believe it's the last game of the day. Clutch versus FlyQuest.
Why are you picking Clutch, Jet?
That's a very good question, Mark.
FlyQuest is 1-7 on red side. They are red side today. That's a lot of it.
That's it. That's
Who's the one win over?
I said this last week, but I've since forgotten. So just go check the tapes.
Stat. Mark stat.
Yeah.
Fooled you.
All right, I'll take a look.
It was a game where they got Zoe on red side, which I don't think Clutch is going to let him do.
But otherwise, these guys are in agreement. The league is starting to look like it's a little bit more certain when it comes to picking who's going to win each matchup. With that, let's get to game one. So we're tossing it out to the Battle Arena for the call.